3, 4.
Instant karma is the result of all of our actions. Every action that we make has a consequence. What we put out to others comes back to us, and this is called the ripple effect. We stand for a positive reflection of self and others. We give respect, we honor traditions and cultures, and we share that knowledge. What we as humanity do as one is up to us, and it's time to make that choice. In an era where truth is buried like a lost treasure and history is being rewritten, we believe now is that time to correct this. See, truth is like the sun, and eventually that light comes out. And here on Instant Karma, we feel it is our purpose that we all shine on together as one. This is Instant Karma Show. I'm Valerie Clark with guest today, Dr. Robert C. Worstell. With over 6 books printed in 175 iterations, one could say that Dr. Worstell is a successful author. He doesn't think so because he is more interested in answering the question, how else can I help someone? Raised on a Missouri farm with a large family of siblings, he left home a few days after high school to engage in what became a wide-ranging set of adventures across the country on both coasts. The bulk of Dr. Worstell's books have been in the area of self-help and personal development. He's also written, compiled, edited, and published books about internet marketing as well as his many cartoons and caricatures. His philosophy is that being is only as valuable as they can serve others effectively. Thank you for joining me, Robert. I appreciate you being here today on Instant Karma Show.
Well, I'm really glad that you had me. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to tell people about stuff or to meet with you and everybody out there.
Thank you. You most recently published a novel called Just Publish, ebook creation for indie authors. Now, this book offers great insight for anyone wishing to publish. What was the concept behind creating this book?
Well, I've been publishing books for years and really kind of became aware of how successful ebooks have taken off. It used to be you could only sell just PDFs, but then they became these ebooks, and I really hadn't kept track of them too much, but I found out that there's a lot of buzz about these, so I started studying it. And as I studied more and more about it, I found out that a lot of bogus data was being spread about how hard it is and how careful you have to be about publishing. And I said, it's not really that hard at all. It's just too easy to do to publish a book, and you can do it with, the real concept was just as I do it, which is you can publish any book with just what's at your hand. You don't have to spend money. Low cost or nothing is the phrase I used in there.
So what tools would one find in Just Publish that could help them to publish a book?
Well, the great thing I was able to do with Just Publish was to put a big page of resources out there for people to use. A lot of people like to use Word. In Just Publish, you'll see that I first give you 3 links out to Amazon and Lulu and Smashwords with specific instructions they have about how you can take Word and change it into an ebook. But then I go on because I use a Linux box at home. I gave up Windows years ago out of necessity. And I use all free, most of them come with Linux, but they also are available on Windows platform, which is you start off with OpenOffice instead of Word. Then you use a plugin for OpenOffice called Writer to EPUB, which converts your OpenOffice, your Word document, basically, or word processing document into an EPUB format, which is a format for ebooks. Then you use a book program called Siegel, and that will check it to make sure that it fits all the standards for the industry. And then you use Calibre, which is another free program, which is really a librarian for all your books and documents on your hard drive. And that will allow you to put all the metadata in there to keep it and see what it's going to look like, so you can proof the document before you upload it. And then I give a lot of resources about where to upload it, what they're looking for, and all the different places you can put it up. Again, everything, and there's a fourth one, not counting the plugin as a program, called GIMP, which you can do your GIMP, Graphic Image Manipulation Program is what it stands for, that you can do your own covers. So the whole point is from the beginning to the end, you've got the writing and the conversion and the double checking and then the covers, and then you can go ahead and upload it. And that's all those few things are all you need to do to get a book, your own ebook, published and up.
Which would cost thousands to go through a publishing company or trying to do self-publishing through these other sites.
And that's exactly what the thousands that people don't have. is the whole point. You know, when you're just starting out as a writer, of course, you got your day job, but you've got this story in you that you want to get out, or it's trying to get out of you, one or the other. But the whole point is you can start with just what you have at your fingertips and get that first book out. Yeah, sure, you can. The great thing about ebooks is you can always improve on them later. You can update them, you can add more chapters or take away, you can do a new cover, you can do new descriptions. And the whole point is if you get it started now, you're out there ahead, and it's done. And then you start on your next book. One of the key things I found in this that if you really want to make a living as an author, then you have to have a lot of books up there. And the authors should spend their time writing. You know, yeah, sure, when the money comes in, just like Amanda Hawking did, then she got somebody to do her covers and she got somebody to do her copy editing to proof them up even better. But at the beginning, the first 8 books she wrote, she did everything herself.
Oh, wow. You don't need to be a celebrity to succeed at anything. JAPE is an acronym for what?
Well, JAPE stands for just another publicity excuse. Because I kept running into these books that were just, some of them were really, really bad, and some of them were just not quite so bad. But when you're a celebrity, what they're trying to do, you have to go step backwards and say, why is this person writing a book? Now, it's perfectly okay for a business owner to go write a book about their expertise because what they're trying to do is use that book as a lead generator and get either more consulting gigs or advisory gigs or get them to buy other products. And that's fine. But now an author who's writing fiction wants to build an audience. He wants to cultivate, like if you're writing books about vampires, you want to talk to people about that are interested in reading fiction stories about vampires. But when you're a celebrity, the problem with the several celebrity books, they're doing it for God knows what reason, but more than likely either they want speaking jobs or they want a lot of adoration. I don't know. But my main problem with their books is they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
They may have written a book or had people ghostwrite books with them before, and they go to the internet and they say, like a couple of these guys are internet marketing freaks, you know, or gurus, and they're real well-known names in the internet marketing field, but that's okay, that's its own field. We don't need to go there. But the problem was they told you, here's how you write a book. One of them said you take a bunch of note cards and you write down all the key points you want to cover. And then you go to the internet and you look these things up and you write several paragraphs on each one and you put them all in order. And that's your book. You just have it all done. And another guy said, yeah, it's easy to write a book. You go find where there aren't a lot of books, but there's a lot of people looking for it, and then write a book about that. But that doesn't fit with most people that I know of and most authors I followed. The guys that are serious about writing, or even if they're not, they've got a story inside them that needs to get out. They aren't going to sit there and go, and they don't know the first step about writing. And a lot of these problems, the guys don't address the problem. Well, everybody's talking about writer's block, but what do you do about it? It's like Mark Twain and the weather. Everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. Writer's block is really simple to do. And so in my book, JAPE was, we're getting back into Just Published, which is how I solved the problem. JAPE was, after I finished Just Publish, I really still had this irritation or all this angst or whatever you want to call it. And it was just an outlet. It was like a cathartic release, so to speak, of just writing this thing from the viewpoint of a celebrity who just wanted to jump on the bandwagon. And so the whole thing and why I made it available for free was just to have some fun with it and to take the seriousness off the subject because it's not a serious subject. The more serious you get about life and living this, the harder it is to live. So if you take that, I've made all the tools available in Just Publish, and there's several other good books out there about how to write ebooks. It's not to say mine is the only one. It just happens to be in my opinion, the best. But the point is that you really have to go ahead and enjoy everything you're doing. So if you've got a story inside you, how do we get this story out? You don't buy this, and Just Publish ran into this, and JAPE is just a reason, just an excuse not to buy all the hype that's out there because you can't get over serious about this, but you do need to learn the tools. And learning how to write and learning how to publish books and learning how to sell them online are not difficult things. And so JAPE is just a thing saying, would you just quit listening to all these celebrities? You know, you don't have to be a celebrity to sell a book. You do have to be passionate about whatever it is or listen to the muse inside you about how to get that book out. But the whole thing was JAPE was just something, and that's why I tell people, look, if you want to go have some fun, go to Amazon and leave the funniest review you can think of about the book, you know, because we just want to have a great time with this stuff.
Because I know for a fact that I have bought books on Kindle and I'm thinking, what was this? So you wrote a series called Go Thunk Yourself. What is the Thrive Learning System?
Oh, well, Go Thunk Yourself was when I was a consultant and a counselor for many years, and I pretty much found out that the corporation I was working for was really trying to put this in polite terms, was in it for the money. Okay, and their system that they were pushing didn't really work in the real world. It only worked if you spent your money with them. And so I just kind of got disgusted with it and retired back to the farm and said, okay, now all these years I've spent, is it just a useless waste of my time? And should I just crawl off in a corner and cry for a few years or something? But instead I said, why don't we just research this out? By then I'd learned that my fingers were over prolific anyway, and they would just keep writing whatever when I put at the keyboard, they keep going. So I just started researching this. It took a few years, and Go Thunk Yourself was the result. I found out that self-help itself is a natural system that runs regardless. It runs through everybody, and it doesn't depend who you are or where you were brought up or sex or age or skin color or anything else. Self-help works because it does. And so there are certain principles that guide it, or that if you know them, you can apply them to your life. And so Go Thunk Yourself was originally 14 points. I wrote it on the lines of computer books. You'll learn JavaScript or something else you didn't know in 24 hours or 14 days, whatever. And so I gave 14 days to say, if you do this every day for 14 days, you can see whether it works for you. I already went through, I don't know how many books it was. And I think in that study it was something like, it narrowed down to about 20 books that were representative of, they were all had to be bestsellers after their author died, which is what takes the whole thing of charisma out of it. Like Jape has celebrities, authors, and that after the celebrity dies, usually the book sales, there's nothing left. But these were books that have gone down through the ages as constantly known. Like everybody knows about Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, right? Well, there's a few others like Wallace Wattles' Science of Getting Rich, or Charles Haanel's Master Key System, which supposedly Bill Gates read before he took off. That's an urban legend. But there's several others like this, or Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, or anyway, I could go on and on and on, but there's a whole list of these. And by boiling down all these books that continue to be bestsellers, then we have all the principles that are common to each one of them. I was looking for common principles, and sure enough, if you follow all these, then you can improve your life. So self-help is a basic system. Now, all that said, the second one was I had to analyze analysis to know that I could actually research accurately. So the second book is Go Sunk Yourself Again, which is how to reform your thinking. Came up with some real radical stuff. But the second book was how to think faster. It's something like you can almost something like 2, 3, 4 times as fast as you're thinking now. You'll think that, and this is not just thinking, having random thoughts rattle through your head, but more like how you can analyze things, how you can understand things, how you can take them apart and putting them back together. And this was because I had to learn how to analyze and make sure it would come up with a result before I could say, well, yeah, I just researched all this stuff. Okay, that was the second book. The third book was then my own path in applying this to myself, or giving here's how you would take all these books apart and put them back together so that they would help you apply this material to your life. Then the fourth book was after that, which was also called Freedom Is, or Go Thunk Yourself Revisited. We have Go Thunk Yourself Again, Go Thunk Yourself Some More, and then Go Thunk Yourself Revisited, which was really written on the 10th year anniversary of actually starting the research. Go Thunk Yourself Revisited takes you from being pretty much clear on where you are and what you're doing, pretty much sorted out with what we've covered so far, being stable, you aren't affected too much by stuff, and going on up to the point where you can reach this I usually call it a much ballyhooed, or not what it cracked up to be, state called enlightenment.
Right.
Right, because yeah, you can achieve enlightenment, but you got to go through the point. Well, a lot of people achieve enlightenment, and then what?
Right. Exactly.
Right. Well, and so the whole point, that was my journey through this stuff, figuring this all stuff out. And at that point, we start entering other additional data, additional authors like Lester Levinson and Jose Silva, which were doing their research in the 50s. Now, both of them are now gone, and their stuff is being continued by their followers. But the whole point with that was they studied techniques that used together, along with these other, stalwart classic self-help books, that really jumpstarts or accelerates the whole pace of getting on this road to personal enlightenment, right? And then, of course, there's not, I think it was Alan Watts said that a lot of people, a lot of these Buddhist monks would go into these monasteries and they'd study for years and years and years, and finally you reach this state of satori or high state, and then they would, after that, they would go out on their go back to where they were living before and take up their original job that they were trained at and just go live a regular life. So that's the whole thing. And I've got a fifth book already written. It's just got to be edited and put back together. And that's more on this whole point of what's life after enlightenment. Okay, now we haven't answered the question about the Thrive learning system. Okay, now along this line, I found the point a lot of things fall into a system of 4 different points. If you go mind, body, value, and purpose, then you can see where you are in relation to where you want to be, right? Mind, of course, would be, and then what you do with the Thrive learning system is to then plug in materials or resources for each of those points. Okay, mind, if you want to clear your mind, you'll get rid of all these stresses and stuff in your life, but that's just clearing your mind. Body, people have physical ailments. Now, a lot of these, yes, they can be caused by the mind, but then you have to feed the body. You have to take care of it, exercise it, not too much food, not too little food, the right quality of food. Okay, value. Now, it's not covered in schools very much, but if you read Earl Nightingale and Charles Handel also covered this in his Master Key System, what we want to do, what you want to achieve, okay, and we talked about this in our pre-interview was the golden rule applies here. You'll only get back as good as you give out. Now, in some points like the Druids and the earlier religions, you'll see that they say that it's you get 10 times back what you put out. So the value has to be part of your system there. How much are you exchanging to the environment? And as I say all the time, is you want to pay it forward in advance because obviously you've got. And Napoleon Hill said this: you got to give before you can get. Because you throw a pebble into a pond, and what happens? Well, those ripples ultimately come back to you,
The pond expands
right?
outwards. It's like the universe. Exactly.
Exactly. That you want to make sure that you are giving the best value you can. And then the fourth point is then purpose. What the hell are you here for? Would be a blunt phrase of it. But other things of purpose, Joseph Campbell talked about your bliss that you follow, the things that make you feel good, the things that you know that you're constantly, that I talk about in writing a book. I say, well, write about something that you could talk to somebody all day about if they were willing to listen. You're so fascinated with it. The things that always, improve your life. Well, that if you narrow these things down, that's your purpose, right? That's what you follow your bliss, you follow your purpose. And if you align these 4 points, mind, body, value, and purpose, then you can get an adjustment in your life, and you'll find the best. You'll find the zone that you need to operate. You get into the Zen level of living, and that's the whole point. And so then back from that, then I find all the resources that have to do with mind, which would be all these self-help books, with body, which would be things like I live on a farm and I raise grass-fed beef. But you also find people that if you get to more naturals, this is a big organic movement. And then on your value, what work are you doing, and does it align with what you want to do? It was Covey, the one that really covered into this with his 7 habits of the highly successful people. He said that you really want to give value in excess, and Wallace Wattles, Science of Getting Rich. You see how these points keep coming up, as I mentioned, that you want to give value in excess of what you could possibly, the cash value of what you're going to receive. There's the way Wattles said it. Covey said you have to keep your eye on that mission statement. How does this thing give out to others the best possible? Because it's an old point, which was if you want to get rich, you want to make other people rich. If you want to be happy, go smile at people. So if you want to be really insanely rich, if you want to be a millionaire, go help other people become millionaires. Ray Kroc and Sam Walton made more millionaires than they could keep track of. And they did it as part, but see, what were they doing? As much as you may not like McDonald's food, as much as you may not like Walmart, that's beside the point. What they did was created tons and tons of jobs for people and wealth for other people by improving the ready access to food and materials. And so they gave to society incredible value. And of course, the whole point was that Sam Walton was interested in finding how to merchandise stuff. He was fascinated with merchandising. And how do you get value out to people? And what he did for middle America, where you were not well served by the stores at the time, by selling a lot more for a little less, that philosophy brought tons of stuff into middle America to raise their quality of living. Yes, there is a natural system of improvement that anybody can follow. Yes, it is easy to publish a book and get your own story out for other people. Yes, you don't have to follow conventional wisdom. This is where I come from on this. Is how do we help people find themselves? I could go on for hours, but I think you got other questions for me.
So I think you've answered it, but how simple is it to write a book in this era of technology?
Well, the book is as hard as you make it, the bottom line.
Okay.
The point is, if you can, my point of this book was to say it's awfully damn simple to write a book. You can and you should start right now getting that book out of your head. Everybody has a story. If you can get your story out there, then you'll help somebody with that story, even if you never meet them, even if only one person reads your story. It doesn't matter. Right now, anybody can and everybody should write their story and get it online for as many people to read it as possible. And that's the bottom line. It doesn't have to be perfectly coiffed and immaculately tailored before you get started. You just simply start writing it. And yeah, if you want to review it, you can update it, change it, add more chapters, take some out, put a different cover, change everything you want anytime you want, because it's a digital age. It's no longer what used to keep people from writing their own, publishing their own books was the expense of publishing, right? It had to be printed, and the publishers were only going to take books that they knew could sell and pay back the cost of the printing plus some. That's called a profit, the plus some. And they stayed in business as long as they had a lot of books. They were giving them that plus some. So they would only take books that would sell well, not necessarily the best books out there, but the ones they knew would sell well. Nowadays, you don't have to have a publisher, you don't have to have an agent. You just sit there and get started. And the whole point, anybody, and then people like me that have over verbose fingers and more books shouting to get out than they have, Carter has pills, is the point. You just sit down there, write a book, get it published, write your next book, get it published, and start shooting these things out. And after a while, you have a nice little tidy income coming from people buying these ones and twos books of yours.
You have a book, Scam Free. It has very informative information. Now, tell me about this book and what it has to offer and the key points that you'd like to tell me about this novel, because I've read it and I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad you liked the book. I hope you left a review somewhere. The key part of Scam Free, I wrote, of course, I already told you the story about being out in the corporate world for 20 years and feeling that I just wasted my life. But after that, then I started studying how to, because I was writing books, but I needed to learn how to sell them. I signed up with a company that was supposed to teach me how to sell things on eBay. Well, it turns out I already knew everything they had. So when I went to get my money back, nope, sorry. State law says it's just 3 days. It took them longer than that to ship me the materials. So the whole thing was a scam. And, I could rail all I wanted, but they had me dead to rights. So then I started researching, and it was very funny. I kept blogging all the time, and they didn't like me blogging because I kept finding all this data about what was happening, what the company was and where they were located and who was involved and what they were doing in earlier things they'd been involved in. And I found other people were talking back and forth with me, and we were interviewing, and people would get a hold of me, and I'd blog what they said. At the end of it, I not only got all my money back, but a lot of other people got their money back because I told them how to do it. But that's pretty much, we've settled between us and we're fine.
Wow.
The Scam Free, the point is, I wanted to know, there's a great book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, and he lays out the 7 points that cover, to his mind, what made him keep filling up his house with needless junk that he didn't need, and his bank account kept getting emptied because the more he made at work, the more he bought stuff in the stores. He couldn't go out of a store without buying something. His friend came over and said, "Why don't you return it?" Because then I'd go buy something else home. I'd bring something else home. So he figured out there were 7 points, and he's actually made a nice little living just continuing to update this and lecture people on these 7 points of influence. But the funny thing was, with that one, I came across that reference to Cialdini's influence in an internet marketer says, here's how you influence people to buy your stuff. They were using the flip side of it, right? But a little bit more research came in and showed Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs, which say at the bottom you're doing the physical stuff, food, body, everything. And then at the top end of the pyramid is self-actualization. And so this was a point that shows you then where a person is going to go from the bottom to the top, not just running the body now, but really going to Zen state we were talking about before. Satori or enlightenment or whatever thing like that. And so you can move up to that. But that was all well and good. But I said, well, that doesn't quite explain everything. So I kept looking and I found Lester Levinson, which we talked about before, who went through a similar, well, he was about to die. And doctor said at that time in the 40s, he said, just go home and rest. It's just a matter of time. Don't get out of bed. You're done. You've had 3 coronaries and you're done. That's it. You've got all sorts of other things wrong, and I can't do anything. Nobody can do anything for you. So instead of laying down in bed, he sat upright in a chair and just thought. It took him about 3 months to figure everything out, but at the end of it, he got into this extremely high state. And what he learned, he boiled it all down. It took him years after that to figure out what he'd done during those 3 months to get that way. He was a go-getter his entire life, and that's why he just didn't sit down and take this. So that was the last 3 things. He said that you need to release on control, approval, and security. Now, there's a 4th one he really touched on later, which was being part of or being separate from something, you always having to join a group or something like that. So you have Cialdini's 7 points, where he says this is what the scammers are using to make you buy things. But Maslow is saying that buy things is really down the scale. What you really should be looking for is self-actualization at the end of it. Go through all these various changes in states and wind up there. Levinson says, look, the main things that are holding these in place are your buttons on control, approval, security, and joining or being part of. If you just simply let those go, it's the glue that holds everything else together. And the book itself is pretty short. The printed version has a bunch of stuff on telemarketers tacked on the end, but that's just because so to stand up on the bookshelf. The key points are all in the front, and I've given those away for free so many times it's not funny. You go to slideshare.net, you can find them, for instance, all as PDF downloads. I've made videos on each step, and those are the key points. If you know those, you don't have to be scammed by somebody else. And all these things are just tools of how you can actually quit stopping yourself, which means just starting. Start up more stuff, and that means by starting, you'll quit stopping.
Right. Exactly. What are you planning on for the future?
I've got another 24 books to write. The next thing I've got to study is MLM, multi-level marketing or network marketing, which is, everybody knows, quote unquote, is full of scams and pyramid schemes. Underlying that is actually a sound business plan, or it wouldn't have lasted this long, right? So there's MLM series, or one book at least. I've already mentioned a couple of books that are already written. I just have to edit them into shape. There's internet marketing series to do. Again, I published those before, but I have to republish them. Then I've updated them. Then I've updated the update. And there's a whole nother model that I found that I call it a business diamond. I have a video online somewhere about the business diamond, which gives a whole metaphysical, philosophic base to business that any business can use to improve itself. And that's completely unwritten. I just had some ideas yesterday for it. Oh, brother, I have a lot of work to do. But anyway, after these 24 books done that I know I have stacked up, then after that, I think there's one I'm going to do called the Tao of Brer Rabbit, and then because that just needs to be written. Then I'll get finally back to illustrating. That's one of my big loves from as a kid, and I still go out to festivals in the summer sometimes and do caricatures, but to illustrate some children's books. There are some beautiful stories. They're out of print these days. It just need to be revived because as I mentioned, people live through stories. They compare their stories to the stories around them. Well, there are whole collections of folk stories. I remember there's one on Hawaiian folk tales. There's all the Amerindian folk tales, and all of these are meant, and they pass down through the ages just much as Aesop stories were. So I've got plenty to keep me busy, if that's your question.
That was my question. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Robert C. Worstell. Not only has it been an honor being your friend, it has been a pleasure having you as a guest today.
The honor is all mine. Thank you very, very, very much. Glad I met you. Glad I befriended you. Glad you shared all your time and life with me.
I appreciate that, Robert. That was author and owner of Worstell Farms. Please visit the websites for more on Robert's books and his farm, MidwestJournalPress.com and WorstellFarms.com. Thank you for listening to Instant Karma Show. I'm Valerie